If you've ever kept a secret that could ruin you, this story will feel a little too real. Subscribe. You'll want to hear how it ends. Another morning, another lie wrapped in silk sheets. The woman beside me, auburn hair fanned across the pillow, skin warm from sleep, had already begun to stir. She was beautiful in the way firelight is beautiful. Meant to be watched, never touched. An escort? Yes. Confidential. Expensive. Forgettable by design. I paid for safety, not affection. Still, I let my eyes linger longer than I should have. Sasha. That wasn't her real name. I never asked for it. I slid out of bed without waking her, padded barefoot across the marble floor of my penthouse, and poured myself a black coffee from the machine that never failed. Manhattan spread beneath the floor-to-ceiling windows like a polished trophy case. All those glittering towers. None of them stood taller than mine. Not bad for a woman who'd once been told she was too emotional to manage logistics. I took a sip and looked back at the bedroom. Sasha had rolled onto her stomach. The sheet dipped low across the curve of her back. I'd requested her through the service twice before, and she knew the rules. No photos, no questions, no staying past 9. It was 8:46. "Coffee?" I called softly. She propped herself up on one elbow, offering me that slow, easy smile I suspected she gave all her clients. "Only if you sit with me." I didn't. I brought her the coffee, handed it to her in silence, and disappeared into the closet to dress. Power has a uniform. Mine was navy wool, custom cut and lined in silk, pin-thin heels, silver brooch like a weapon. By the time I emerged, Sasha was dressed too. Black dress, red lips, hair smoothed to perfection. She stood by the mirror examining her throat. "No marks," she said, half amused. "You're careful." "I always am." She turned, and for a moment I thought she might say something. Something human. But instead she picked up her bag, tucked the envelope I'd left on the dresser inside it, and gave me a parting smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "See you around, Vivian." "Not if the NDA holds," I replied dryly. She laughed. "You always say that." And then she was gone. My driver was waiting downstairs. Silent, as always. The car smelled like leather and lemon oil. I checked emails, ignored messages from my mother, and reviewed the notes for the 9:30 strategy meeting. By the time I stepped out at Denmore Stratton, I had wiped every trace of last night from my mind. That was the thing about control. You couldn't afford to dwell. The lobby was cold and pristine. Men in tailored suits stood in huddled groups, pretending to talk about numbers when all they were really calculating was power. I passed them without slowing. "Morning, Ms. Carlisle," the assistant at the security desk called, her voice chipper. I nodded, eyes already on the elevator. Denmore Stratton and Company wasn't just a corporation. It was an organism. A living, breathing machine made of profit margins, oil deals, and old money. It didn't bend. It consumed. I was its only female executive vice president, and I intended to become its first CEO. My office was a high-floor sanctuary, thick glass walls, private access, and soundproof panels that let me pretend the world below didn't exist. Eva, my head of PR, knocked once and entered. "Morning. The Saudis postponed again. They're waiting on updated numbers from procurement," she said, tapping her tablet. "Tell them they can wait in line." She looked at me for a beat longer than necessary. "Rough night?" I didn't sleep. She didn't press. Eva was one of the few who never did. We'd known each other a decade, long enough for her to guess the things I never said out loud, like why I kept my personal life off every record, or why I never let any woman get close for more than a night. "Teresa's in a mood," she added, glancing at the time. "She wants numbers for Q3 and blood for Q4. "Good," I said. "I've got both." The boardroom was glass and steel and ego. Teresa Lang sat at the head of the table like she'd invented the markets. She wore beige like armor and had a smile sharp enough to draw blood. I took my seat across from her and opened my folder. We danced the usual dance: supply chains, environmental optics, labor concerns. But somewhere in the middle of a heated discussion about the Guatemala refinery, she looked at me over her glasses and said, "You seem distracted, Vivian. Everything all right in your corner of the kingdom?" I didn't flinch. It's difficult to be distracted when I'm busy running half the empire. A few board members chuckled. Teresa didn't. She smiled instead. That tight crocodile smile that meant she smelled weakness. "I hope your evenings aren't interfering with your performance." I met her gaze dead on. The only thing interfering with my performance is having to explain myself twice. Silence. Then Eva, cool as always, slid in with a pivot. "Shall we move on to the offshore compliance updates?" By noon, the meeting was over and my blood was boiling. Teresa knew, or suspected, or someone had whispered something. I wasn't sloppy. I was never sloppy. But something about her tone, smug, deliberate, left a cold coil of dread in my stomach. I returned to my office, poured another coffee, and stared out at the skyline. What if someone had followed Sasha? What if someone had seen us? What if the lie, the one I had crafted so carefully over the years, had finally cracked, and underneath it was me? The first rule was simple: no eye contact during intimacy. It wasn't written into the NDA, but all the escorts knew. It was a Vivian Carlisle signature. "I don't want to see myself in anyone's eyes," I once explained coldly to a new hire the agency sent. She'd nodded, pretended not to flinch, and left her vulnerability at the door like a coat. But Sasha, she didn't flinch. She watched me, even when I told her not to. The second time we met, she lit a cigarette on my balcony and asked, "What scares you more, being caught or being known?" I told her I didn't scare easily. She laughed, eyes like bruised gold in the setting sun. "Everyone has a worse night waiting." That night, I almost kissed her after. Not out of lust, but out of something far more dangerous: familiarity. I didn't. I watched her button her blouse with steady hands and vanish into the elevator like smoke, like she was never here. I spent years building an empire where no one asked questions, where my name meant competence, not complication. And I kept my world airtight: work, sex, ambition, compartmentalized, never intersecting. Until Sasha. Something about her was wrong for the system. She was too curious, too warm. She remembered things I never told her. My favorite wine, the slight tremble in my fingers when I lied. She wasn't just learning my body, she was reading my patterns, and I hated how much I liked it. On Tuesday, a package arrived. No return address, plain manila, no name on the slip, just urgent legal review. Eva slid it across my desk. "This came through back channels. I figured I should open it with you." From who? No signature. I cut the tape carefully, expecting documents, perhaps another complaint about refinery protocol or some half-baked environmental subpoena. Instead, there was a photograph. One, an 8x10, glossy print. Me, midnight. Walking out of the Meridian Hotel in Midtown. Sasha by my side, 5 inches away. I was smiling. I never smiled in public. In the image, her hand was brushing my sleeve. We looked close, not transactional, not professional, just two women sharing a secret. Below the photo was a single typed sentence on white paper. "Thought you should see this before they do." The room tilted. Ava sucked in a breath through her teeth and snatched the photo. "Jesus, Viv." I said nothing. "Where was this taken? Who the hell—" "I don't know." "You recognize her?" she asked carefully. I didn't answer. That told her everything. Eva pinched the bridge of her nose. "You've been discreet for years. Who knows?" "Teresa suspects." "She doesn't have proof." "She doesn't need it. The whiff alone is enough. Eva dropped into the chair opposite mine. Do you want to kill this quietly or fight it head on? There's nothing to kill. It's not public. It will be. You know how these things work. Leaks drip, then they flood. I nodded, mind already spinning. If this was personal blackmail, they'd want money. If it was political, it was only the beginning. Eva stood suddenly businesslike. Damage control starts now. I'll trace who sent this. I'll call IT, pull security logs. I'll handle it. Her eyes softened. You don't have to do this alone. But I will. Because that's how I survived this long. With walls, not allies. That night, I went to Sasha's apartment for the first time. She answered the door barefoot in a t-shirt and leggings. She looked younger like that, less like a mystery, more like a real person. I wasn't expecting you. I need to ask you something. She stepped aside, letting me in. Her apartment was small but soft, woven rugs, crooked paintings, a French press drying on the rack. I handed her the photo. She looked at it for a long time. Then, you kept it. I didn't leak it, Sasha. I know. Her voice was steady, but her eyes, they dimmed. Do you know anyone who might have followed us? I asked. A client? A friend? A handler? No one I didn't trust. Someone didn't trust you. She sank into a chair. They didn't have to sell this. They gave it away. I swallowed hard. Why would they do that? Because you're important, she said. And some people like to see important women bleed. She offered me tea. I declined. I was too wired to drink, too tired to think, and too alive to sit still. Before I left, I turned to her. It can't happen again. She nodded. I figured. I'm not who you think I am. I never said you were, she whispered. But I liked the version of you that smiled. I left without replying. Back in the car, I stared at the photo again, at the slight angle of our bodies. At the moment, stupid, small but real, where I let myself enjoy something I never should have had. I felt exposed, and it had only just begun. It wasn't just one photo. That realization hit me like a low blow, sudden and quiet and vicious. I came into the office Thursday morning to find Eva already inside my office, not at her usual calm pace, but pacing like a caged animal. She didn't say good morning, she didn't offer coffee, she just turned her phone toward me. It's out. The screen displayed a link to a blog I'd never heard of, a tech and gossip site, the kind that sniffed around boardrooms for sex, scandal, and shadow deals. This was their top post. Who is Vivian Carlisle, and who's she really sleeping with? A thread of high-resolution images. Me, the Meridian Hotel, the rooftop bar at the Belmont, the back exit of a midtown jazz club. Different women, different nights, different times. Same me. They'd been watching for months, each photo carefully framed, cropped just enough to avoid nudity, captured just enough to suggest everything. Sasha wasn't the only one, but she was the one I kept going back to. I gripped the edge of my desk, nails digging into the lacquered wood. They sat on this, I said flatly. This wasn't some lucky paparazzi shot. This was planned. Eva nodded, expression tight. Timed perfectly with Q4 restructuring and Teresa's push for chairwoman. I scanned the article. The tone was subtle. No accusations. No clear outing. Just implication. Just smoke. Just enough to make the fire feel like your idea. Sources suggest the powerful VP may have used high-end escort services to protect her privacy, it read. But one has to ask, in a corporation built on trust, what else is she hiding? I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't about the sex. This was about power. They wanted to stain me just enough to make me optional. I didn't speak to anyone for the rest of the morning. The usual faces knocked gently on my door. Interns with coffee, analysts with reports. Eva stood guard, sent them away. I sat with the blinds down and stared at the images again and again, trying to trace the weakness. Where had I slipped? Who had gotten too close? Which moment was my undoing? At 1:12 p.m., my office phone rang. The screen displayed a single word, boardroom. I didn't answer. Eva entered minutes later, pale but steady. Emergency meeting, closed door. You're not invited. That wasn't unusual. When they wanted to replace you, they rarely did it in front of you. Teresa? I asked. She's leading it. I turned back toward the window, watching the city pulse with its usual disinterest. I had climbed every step of this ladder without asking for help, and now they wanted to shove me off in silence. Not scandalous enough to make headlines, just quiet enough to make it permanent. The message came an hour later from a secure corporate account. Sanitized impersonal. Ms. Carlisle, we've received reports that raise serious questions about your professional conduct. As of today, we request that you step back from your executive duties pending internal review. This is not a suspension. This is not a disciplinary action. But it is necessary. Please work from home effective immediately. Denmore Stratton Board of Governance. It was already happening. I stood up and walked to the floor-length mirror behind my desk. The reflection showed the same woman I always saw. Poised, sharp, unreadable. And yet, I could see it now. The crack beneath the armor, the shadow behind the eyes, the edge of something breaking. Eva spoke from behind me, quiet. We need to prep a statement. I'm not denying it. Her brows lifted. I'm not confirming it either, I added. Not until I know who did this. Viv, I want the names. Eva stepped closer. This isn't just personal anymore. You understand that, right? They're turning your silence into shame, and shame into power. I exhaled. I just need time. You don't have it. That night I poured bourbon instead of wine. No glass, just the bottle. I sat in the dark of my penthouse, scrolling past public reactions. Reddit threads, finance forums, private LinkedIn messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were gleeful, some were sympathetic. Most were waiting to see which way the wind would blow. At 11:03 p.m., I received an encrypted message. No subject, no sender, just an attachment. I opened it. It was another photo. A different woman this time. Brunette, tall, one I'd seen only once. Stepping into a car. My car. My driver holding the door open, my hand visible in the corner of the frame. And then the message. This isn't about the women, it's about showing them you're not invincible. I stared at the screen, the whiskey burning down my throat. Whoever this was, they didn't want money, they didn't want publicity, they wanted me to implode. A slow, clean fall. They were playing the long game, and for the first time in years, I didn't know the rules. If you think this is where the story ends, you haven't heard her speak yet. Stay tuned.